Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Vibing with Sleazy, the podcast. This is season 6, episode 6. I want to thank everybody for listening, tuning in, and downloading. This season's been a blast so far. I've had some great guests, and I'm looking forward to continue the season on with some other guests and some solo episodes. So, this is a special solo episode. This is the Super Bowl episode. Super Bowl's coming up with the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and I love breaking down the big sporting events. I love breaking down season previews, so I definitely wanted to make a Super Bowl episode and go over some facts about the big game, but also go over the two teams, give my predictions, and really break it down. I want to shout out my mom. She big Kansas City Chiefs fan. She's been rooting for them since the Joe Montana years. She also pulled for the 49ers, and so she's been liking this recent success. I know I have a lot of Eagles friends, so I know that they're very pumped to see them in the game. When you break down both teams, you got two powerhouse offenses. I mean, these are two heavyweights going at it. With the Kansas City Chiefs, you got Mahomes, you got Kelsey, you got Worthy, you got Hopkins, you got Hunt. I mean, the list goes on. They always have offensive weapons, and their offense is healthy right now. Then you got with the Eagles, and you got Hurts, you got Barkley, you got Brown, you got Smith, you got Goddard, you know, a powerful offensive line. So the Philadelphia Eagles, they are going to be a powerhouse in offense. So I see these two teams scoring a lot of points, really bringing intensity on offense. And then you got defensive wise, been great. You got Jalen Carter from the Philadelphia Eagles. He's been the best ranked player in defense for the playoffs right now, defensively wise. And, over there for the Kansas City Chiefs, you got Chris Jones. He's a sack machine. So I see both of them bringing a lot of pressure, and I'm really excited to see that. And I'm also, you got Slay there in the secondary for the Eagles. So it's going to be tough on defense, but you got two offenses that are just going to bring the points and bring the intensity. So I want to break down a little history of the Super Bowl, some fun facts, which this has been a game going on for a long time because this is Super Bowl 59. I mean, it's crazy to think that number 60 is going to be next week. And with this being Super Bowl 59, there's been a lot of history, a lot of big games, and a lot of players that have really made their legacy, made their name just by playing in this game overall. The history of the Super Bowl, it has a few facts that I really want to focus on. So, number one is the MVPs by positions. I mean, this is really cool to see. Offensively wise, you've had 33 quarterbacks win the award. So, out of 59 Super Bowls coming up here, you would have had 33 that have won. That's a big number for quarterbacks, but that also proves how important the position is. That improves how you have success with a quarterback. Because if you have a quarterback that is not good or a quarterback that can't move the ball, you're not going to have success. So that's why it's such a high paid position. That's why it's so important. That's why so many teams go all in and draft these rookie quarterbacks because they really want to see what can happen and what can transpire when they have a successful quarterback. Um, MVPs by position number two, wide receivers at number 8. That's wild to see, but wide receivers, they changed the game up. There's a lot of big wide receivers. I remember a crazy wide receiver play. It was the St. Louis Rams versus Tennessee Titans. The Titans fell short, but the Titans, they caught that ball and they were so close on the yard line. So there's been a lot of really fun Super Bowl MVPs wide receiver to watch. But when you definitely think about running backs have been huge. Running backs 7, third place, and there's been some very famous running backs that have had big games offensively. And then when you get into the defense, you wouldn't really think about this, but there's been quite a bit of defensive MVPs. And the other thing that's cool about this, a lot of these positions are players that you're kind of shocked that they got the recognition, but defensively wise, every position's won. I wonder if we'll ever see a tight end offensively win the MVP. It's possible, but I really wonder. With the tight end game evolving, I definitely see it potentially happening. But you got four linebackers, two defensive ends, two safeties, one cornerback, one defensive tackle. And then one Super Bowl, number 12, you had two players that won it. They tied a defensive end and defensive tackle. And then this is one that blew my mind. One kick returner, punt returner has won the MVP. So that's really, really cool to see and hear. I remember, Von Miller, Super Bowl 50, defensively winning the MVP. He had a great game. I remember James Harrison when the Steelers played the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, those are just some memorable defensive performances. But overall, I remember a lot of big time offensively performances and a lot of guys that have really really brought the heat. But you also remember guys that yeah, they've had success, longer careers, but the thing about is it's like Joe Flacco, he won the MVP. That's wild to think about because besides winning that Super Bowl and that MVP there for the Ravens, what else did he really do? So it's interesting to see. So I'm really excited to see what happens this year. I think Patrick Mahomes, he's won it already three times. So I mean, for him to possibly win it again, I mean that's just unbelievable. I mean, then you have of course Tom Brady. He's definitely won some MVPs. I remember Hines Ward, he had a really great game, and actually, if I look up some of the names, just to ring a bell, Cooper Cup, another really big Super Bowl MVP. Cooper Cup he did the triple threat season where he broke all the records and basically had the triple crown of wide receiver, which was such an awesome year to see. And then for him to turn around, he won the MVP. With Matt Stafford as his quarterback. So that was definitely a big wide receiver one. But you have guys like Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Emmitt Smith, Steve Young, Deion Branch, and then, yeah, Hines Ward there for the Pittsburgh Steelers, like I mentioned. And then Patrick Mahomes already at three. So a lot of big names. Nick Foles in that Eagles game, he ended up pretty much being a backup. I don't even really think he was supposed to be the main dominant starter because Carson Wentz got hurt, and then bam, Nick Foles wins the MVP. So he's had a really, really good career doing that. So back to some of the Super Bowl fun facts that I was breaking down. The deal with the Super Bowl that is really, really cool to see is that there's a lot of history as well when it comes to city hostings. Like it's wild to think about all the cities that have hosted the Super Bowl, and you also think about who gets home field advantage. Sometimes some of the teams are closer to those cities and bring more fans in. So that's definitely something to take in. Los Angeles has actually hosted the warmest game, and they've also hosted the largest attendance. That was two different Super Bowls, 84 degrees for the hottest one, and then 102,985 people for the largest Super Bowl. So if you think about that, 84 degrees, that's pretty warm in February. So that would have to be a fun game to play in. But here's some of the cities that have hosted the Super Bowl. You have Stanford in California, Santa Clara, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, San Diego, Glendale, Tempe, Arlington, Houston, New Orleans, Tampa, Miami, Jacksonville, Atlanta, Detroit, East Rutherford, Pontiac up in Detroit, Indianapolis, and then Minneapolis. And Minneapolis actually had the coldest game with 2 degrees. I mean, that's really fucking cold. So, a lot of big cities, a lot of wild cities have played. You notice there's a lot of states that haven't got any representation yet or got to do it, but I think hopefully that'll happen. I also see an international Super Bowl happen in the future. I definitely seen that happen in Europe. The NFL is really trying to expand over there, so that's something I could see. The most hostings by a city, you got Miami with 11. So Dolphins, if they ever did make it or had more success, they had home field advantage. Same with New Orleans, 11. LA's had 8. Tampa's had five, and then Phoenix has had four. So that's the top five on the most that have hosted Super Bowl. But those are great cities, Miami, New Orleans, definitely. And then with Indianapolis hosting, Indianapolis is a town that loves to host. They've had the NBA All Star game, they've had March Madness. I've been up there for both. They do it very, very well in that city. Wish their nightlife was a little stayed open a little bit later, but they know how to do it. Fans, hotels, gives you something to do. And they have really great venues for those big time sporting events. Teams with the most losses in Super Bowl: Denver Broncos with five Super Bowl losses. The New England Patriots with five. They've had so much success, but they've also had a lot of losses. The Buffalo Bills with four. They've had a lot of heartbreakers up there in Buffalo. Still waiting to win one. The Minnesota Vikings with four. And then five teams have tied at number three. And that is the Cincinnati Bengals, the Dallas Cowboys, the Los Angeles Rams, the Miami Dolphins, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the San Francisco 49ers. The most trips to the Super Bowl for teams overall, you got Kansas City with seven, the 49ers with eight, the Broncos with eight, the Dallas Cowboys with eight when they had a lot of success there in the 90s. The Steelers with eight, and then the New England Patriots, of course, with 11 during the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era. The Patriots were just so dominant. Four teams have actually never been to the Super Bowl: the Cleveland Browns, the Houston Texans, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Detroit Lions. The Lions and the Texans had a chance this year. They both had a strong chance, but both teams fizzled, and I think the Chiefs and Eagles pretty much were the favorites, and they did their thing. I thought the Ravens would get in the mix, but they just couldn't do it. Mark Andrews couldn't hold on to the ball. Teams with the most wins in Super Bowl: you have Kansas City Chiefs with four, the New York Giants with four, the Green Bay Packers with four, the Dallas Cowboys with five, the San Francisco 49ers with five, the New England Patriots with six, and the Pittsburgh Steelers with six. A lot of Steelers fans, and when you're up in Pittsburgh, they like to say Sixburgh a lot. They love saying they have the most, Super Bowls tied there with New England, but um, I'm hoping some teams can get their numbers up, and I'm hoping the Bengals are one of them. I'd like just to get one there in the books with the Cincinnati Bengals offense. I think we can do it next year. We just got to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing. Um, so I want to break down the teams. So overall, when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, their team leaders was Jalen Hurts with 505 passing yards. You have Saquon Barkley with 442 rushing yards overall. And this is the postseason numbers, by the way. I'm not talking about the regular season because we all know Saquon Barkley almost beat the rushing record of Eric Dickerson. And then Dallas Goddard with 188 receiving yards. He's been a huge tight end. He's been healthy. He's been doing great in the postseason. You got Zach Bond with 26 tackles at linebacker. And then interceptions, you got Mitchell with two, Quinion Mitchell. So overall, the Eagles have definitely brought it this postseason. When you get into the regular season, this is where I want to break down those numbers. Your passing yards leader, of course, Jalen Hurts with 2,903 yards. Saquon Barkley with 2,005 rushing yards, one of the biggest historic seasons of all time. A.J. Brown with 1,079 yards. He had a huge game this last playoff game. Zach Bond with 151 tackles, and then six interceptions by C.J. Gardner-Johnson. With C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Darius Slay, you have big names back in that secondary. The defense has been huge. So that's overall the Eagles in a nutshell. Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, they're just two great players. They can rush the ball, they can take off. And when Jalen Hurts takes off, you know, if he doesn't get in, he's going to score on the tush push, or Saquon Barkley's going to score. And a lot of times when Saquon Barkley has gotten the ball and he just breaks off and takes off, the man is an automatic scoring machine. Half the team has already got their hands up, throwing up touchdown because they know he's getting in there. You also look at Devontae Smith. You know, he had a big year, 833 yards overall with 8 touchdowns. So he had the most touchdowns wide receiver wise. And then, you know, if Dallas Goedert was healthy, you know, 496 yards on the regular season, only playing 10 games. But it just shows how much the tight end's important in today's football and how much of an impact he's had here in the postseason. Rushing wise, Jalen Hurts, you know what I mentioned, 630 rushing yards, but 14 touchdowns overall. So Saquon Barkley having 2,005 rushing yards at 345 carries. He had one less touchdown at 13. So that's crazy that Jalen Hurts with less than, you know, that many yards can still score that many touchdowns. And that also just proves how tough the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line is. I mean, they are just tough. And their schedule overall, how they got here, you know, they beat the Giants, they beat the Cowboys, they lost the Commanders, they beat the Steelers, they beat the Panthers, they beat the Ravens, they beat the Rams, they beat the Commanders, they beat Dallas, they beat Jacksonville, they beat the Bengals, they beat the Giants, they beat Cleveland. They had a bye week. They lost to Tampa. They beat New Orleans. They lost to Atlanta, and they beat the Packers. Now, I didn't do that in order. I did that from week 18 to week one. But overall, that just shows how much success they had. And in the postseason, you know, they beat the Packers, the Rams, and the Commanders. Now, I did that in order, and they are now playing the Chiefs. So that's the Philadelphia Eagles. And I want to break down a little bit about the team. So the Philadelphia Eagles, you know, they are based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They play at Lincoln Financial Field, which is in the South Philadelphia Sports Complex. They were established in July 8th, 1933, 91 years ago. Their first season was in 1933, and they're headquartered at the Nova Care Complex, which is located in Philadelphia. They were in the National Football League from 1933 to present day, with the Eastern Division for a number of years, the American Conference, the Eastern Conference, which they were part of the Capital Division, the National Football Conference, and now the NFC East, which they've been representing since 1970. They got four different color patterns of jerseys. Their fight song is the Fly Eagles Fly, and their mascot is Swoop, the Eagle. Their website, you can check out PhiladelphiaEagles.com. Their owner is Jeffrey Lurie. Excuse me, the CEO, Jeffrey Lurie. Their president is Don Smoletsky. The general manager is Howie Roseman, very, very popular GM. And then their head coach is controversial Nick Sirianni. The team history has been, you know, they were 1 year in 1943, the Phil Pitt Steagles. Don't know the story on that, but very interesting. Fun fact there. The team nicknames have always been the Birds or the Eagles. And the league championships, they have four. They have one Super Bowl championship, which was in 2017. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about MVPs. Conference championships, they have six. And then they have 16 division championships. And the Kansas City Chiefs coach, Andy Reid, he did have coaching history and successful years there in Philadelphia. They've had 31 NFL playoff experiences. They've also had six home fields over the years, and they've had quite a bit of team owners. But overall, the Philadelphia Eagles, I think their team right now is valued at 8.3 billion. They've always been successful. They have a very strong fan base. Philadelphia is very loyal and strong. So, you know, they've even been featured in Always Sunny episodes and other stuff. So, I'm excited to see what happens, and that's the breakdown of the Philadelphia Eagles. So I want to break down the Chiefs and get into their stats. So overall for the postseason, Patrick Mahomes, of course, been the passing leader with 422 yards. Kareem Hunt's had 108 yards. Travis Kelce's had 136 receiving yards. Overall on tackles, you have Drew Tranquil with 14, and then they haven't had any interceptions. So even though they got the bye and they had the two games, hadn't had a single pick playing here in the postseason, which, you know, That's shocking because there seems like there's a lot of picks thrown nowadays. When you break down the overall regular season on the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes had close to 4,000 yards, 3,928 passing. Kareem Hunt had 728 rushing yards. Travis Kelce had 823 receiving yards, so no 1,000-yard receiver this year for the Chiefs. And then for tackles overall, you had 106 tackles with Nick Bolton. And then interception wise, again, not a huge number, but you had Jaden Hicks with three. So the Chiefs overall, they have a strong offense. Not a lot of huge names, but players that definitely know how to play. You have Juju Smith-Schuster. You had Rasheed Rice where he got hurt. You have P. Ryan. You have Hopkins. You have Noah Gray, Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, Justin Watson. All of them have weaponage to them. They know how to score, they know how to move, they know how to get the ball down the field. And then running game wise, they had Isaiah Pacheco who came back from the leg injury, Kareem Hunt, he's always been huge ever since they got him from the Browns again. And then they also had Carson Steele. He didn't have a huge year, but he did all right for them early when they were especially dealing with the injuries. And then Patrick Mahomes, he's been unbelievable, incredible. And then, Carson Wentz, he's got the participation award. I mean, he only had 12 attempts on the year. So Mahomes has actually stayed healthy. Sometimes he's dealt with a high ankle sprain. So he's looked good, especially out there playing, but he just definitely not his year. It was not an MVP year for Patrick that you usually expect. But I think overall with the Chiefs and the Eagles, I think they match up very well. Like I said, offensively, I think it's going to be big time scoring. But in my opinion, my prediction before I break down, I want to break down their schedule too, is and I'll do that first. So breaking down their schedule, they lost to Denver. They beat Pittsburgh, which their Denver loss, they had the backups in. They beat Houston. They beat Cleveland. They beat the Chargers. They beat the Raiders. They beat the Panthers. They beat the Bills. They beat Denver. They beat Tampa. They beat the Raiders. They beat the 49ers. They beat the Saints. They beat the Chargers. They beat Atlanta, beat Cincinnati, and they beat Baltimore. So they almost had an undefeated season if they didn't have those two losses with the Bills and Denver. In Denver, they weren't even trying there. And I went in reverse like I did. And then postseason wise, in order, they beat Houston, they beat Buffalo, and now they're playing Philly. So I think prediction wise for this game, I see it, like I said, high scoring. I see 42-35. That sounds crazy, but that is a big prediction for me, and I say it Philadelphia Eagles. I think Saquon Barkley is the X factor. I think he wins MVP. I think the receivers are going to be doing well. I think there's going to be a lot of running, especially quarterback scrambles, quarterback options. I think a lot of the running game. I see A.J. Brown having a big game. But with the Chiefs, I see Mahomes having a big game. I see Kelce having a big game. A lot of them have the experience of already playing in the big game. But the Eagles are too dominant this year. This is the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl year. I see it being high scoring, like I said, and I just don't see the defense keeping Barkley down. He's healthy. He's a running machine. I mean, he can go for 200 plus yards in a game. And, and that's what's crazy too. He can go for 200 plus yards in a game, and the rest of the offense can still do big things like quarterback, wide receiver, tight end. So I love both offenses, but the Eagles, they're getting it done this year. So I want to break down some stuff about the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Kansas City Chiefs, they were established on August 14th, 1959, 65 years ago. They play in Arrowhead Stadium, Kansas City, Missouri, actually. A lot of people get that mixed up. Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, actually two different places. Very close, though. Headquartered in the University of Kansas Health System training facility in Kansas City, Missouri. They are part of the American Football League from 1960 to 1969 in the Western Division. But now that since 1970 present, they've been part of the American Football Conference and the AFC West. They got four jersey schemes. Their mascot was War Paint, and then they also have Casey the Wolf. The website, Chiefs.com. The owner is the Hunt family. The chairman's Clark Hunt. CEO's Clark Hunt. President's Mark Donovan. The GM's Brett Veach. And then the head coach is legendary Andy Reid. If Andy Reid has 2 to 3 more winning seasons, he'll be the all-time winningest coach of all time. So, and I see Andy Reid doing it. I mean, as long as he stays healthy, he can do it. The team history, they actually, for 2 years, were the Dallas Texans. So the Houston Texans became a team so long in the future, but the Kansas City Chiefs actually, for 2 years, were the Dallas Texans. And then came the Kansas City Chiefs from 63 on to present day now. Team nicknames also were the Redwood Forest back in the 60s to 70s, and then they had the Legion of Zoom when they were running it all over the place on offense 2018, 2021. League championships, they have five. They won some in the AFL, and then they had the Super Bowl championships with four. So the AFL championships was, of course, different than the Super Bowl, but they've won multiple. They were one of the earliest teams back then, but four Super Bowl championships, and of course, a lot of them recent 2019, 2022, 2023 with Mahomes. Conference championships, they got five. Division championships, they have 17, and they have 27 playoff appearances. Now, they've played at three stadiums. They played at the Cotton Bowl, Municipal Stadium, and then Arrowhead Stadium. Team owners have only been two: Lamar Hunt, which was the principal owner for since day one, and then Clark Hunt, who took over in 2006. The Chiefs have kept a lot of their players together. They've also brought people back that have kind of been through the Chiefs system. They've done it really well, and Andy Reid, he coaches really well, and he's got a very, very good coaching staff. That's why this game is so hard to pick, to bet on, to choose, to really think of odds because both teams are just full of so many weapons. But I think the Philadelphia Eagles, I think they win it. I think they get it done down in New Orleans. The halftime performance this year for the Super Bowl is Kendrick Lamar. That's going to be a really big performance. I know there's a little controversy. A lot of people want a Lil Wayne or a Louisiana artist, but Kendrick Lamar got it. He got the nod. He's really hot right now. He's got a bunch of Grammy nominations coming up. So I'm really excited to see the halftime performance. I like when they have rap and hip hop. I think it's also good for the genre. It exposes people to the music that might not have heard. Plus, he's got a new album out. So, I've seen him live before, and I'm hoping he plays some of the classics. I'm hoping he plays some of the hits. But I'm just overall excited for the Super Bowl. I mean, just two great games. It's been an awesome season. Not too many horrible injuries, and a lot of historic matches and historic accomplishments that's happened. You know, Jamar Chase with the Triple Crown for my Bengals. Saquon Barkley almost beating Eric Dickerson's rushing record. I mean, it's always fun when the offense is hot. I mean, when offense is hot in any sport, it's always fun. It's always watch, check out. I know this is a shorter episode, but I just wanted to break down the big game. I always do this. I've broken down the Masters, baseball, basketball, the finals. I've done it all. So I was really wanting to break down a Super Bowl. I did a playoff breakdown earlier in this season. So this is my Super Bowl pick. So Philadelphia Eagles, 42-35, Saquon Barkley, MVP. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and downloading and listening. VibingWithSleazy.com. Check out the website. It's got season 1 through 4 on there. Looking to get 5 and 6 up. Season 1 through 6 is on all platforms. So Spotify, Apple, 32 plus platforms. Check it out. Vibing with Sleazy has been listened to on every continent, been downloaded in every city, state, you name it. It's been there, and I just can't appreciate the love and support and showed just as of late. It's just been great, and I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be connecting with people again, getting just back into my rhythm of podcasting, and I'm excited. I'm excited for the guests I've had, and I'm excited for the future ones. But yes, Super Bowl, check it out. Kendrick Lamar halftime, New Orleans, Louisiana, Superdome, Philadelphia Eagles beating the Chiefs. Peace.